we're speaking of incredible community people. We're going to bring Ramiro in. Ramiro has been a part of the San Francisco Bay Area community for many years, and if you didn't see on the Cube Crash program the abstract for this talk, you need to go check it out. It was one of my favorite abstracts. Basically, Super Mario was the OG platformer, right? And Ramiro is also a platform engineering expert, which is why we've asked Ramiro to come and speak to our audience. So Ramiro, thank you so much for joining us, and thanks for bringing your incredible presentation skills and your amazing talks to Cube Crash.
Hi, Lisa, thank you for having me. Super excited to be part of Cube Crash. I've watched a lot of them over the years, so it's really cool to finally get a chance to be on the other side and share what I'm hoping will be an entertaining and also hope something that leads to some reflections and learnings as we all together continue to figure out what is platform engineering and what is all of these things and how can we enable developers more and more. I'm very
Awesome.
excited.
We'll duck out and leave it to you.
Thanks.
All right. All right. Well, I can't see the Cube Crash screen, but hopefully you can see me. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for having me here. Excited to be chatting with you today, and I'm going to be talking about how playing Super Mario, the OG platformer game, made me a better platform engineer. My name is Ramiro Berrelleza, as Lisa and Daniel said. I am the founder and CEO of Okteto. I was born in Mexico, but these days I call Oakland, California, in the San Francisco Bay home. I love talking about cloud native development experience, open source, emojis, food, travel, all the things. If you want to connect after today, my kind of like business email is there. Also, Berrelleza is my handle pretty much everywhere I can get it. Twitter, well, X, I guess these days. The coordinates is Slack, Discord, and a few of other places. So always looking forward to connecting and chatting more after the talk. That's always the best part of conferences is the hallway track. With that, well, as I said, normally I'm on Oakland, California, but today I happen to be calling in from Lansing, Michigan. I'm visiting family, but this is to me one of the really cool things about Cube Crash is how we can all connect no matter where we are. So I am today talking from the Midwest, Lansing, capital of Michigan. If you've never been here, I recommend. They have amazing, amazing cherry pie, which happens to be one of my hidden passions. So just real quick, I'm the founder of a company called Okteto. It's a platform that enables everybody in your organization to easily deploy remote dev environments for development, for testing, for pull requests, and even for AI agents. If this is your kind of thing, please go to GitHub/Okteto/Okteto. We have an open source project, always looking for feedback, likes, ideas, and then we also have a commercial platform for those who might be interested. But that's it with Okteto, because today we're here to talk about Super Mario. For those of you who don't know much about video games, Super Mario is one of the oldest, longest running franchises in the history of video games. The first Super Mario Bros. Was launched, I believe, in 1985, which is about the same time I was born. And since then, every console, at least I think every couple of years, there's a new one. And it's interesting because I grew up playing video games. I still kind of remember the first console I got and games over time. But the other day, and it's actually a real story. I was hanging out at a friend's house. He's a bit of a video game collector, and he was showing me that he had just found. He bought this old like NES, the first Nintendo console, and he wanted to play. And he said, "Hey, why don't we just play together and let's go play the first Mario?" And my first reaction was, am I going to remember how to play this game? Like, am I gonna make a fool of myself in front of my friend? And then as we put up the game and start playing, I was like, wow, no, this is kind of like natural to me. I still remember how to jump, how to dash, how to go left and right. And then as we were talking, it kind of made me kind of reflect on this and say, hey, that's interesting how this game, I've been playing different versions of this game over the past 40 years now. You can see the white in my beard now. But a lot of the common patterns, a lot of the feel is still there. And then being the geek I am and being the platform engineering lover I am, kind of got to the point where like, hey, there's an interesting thing here. Platformer games, especially Mario, have all these patterns, all these ways where they make it entertaining and exciting and challenging for players, to keep us hooked and to keep us enjoying the game. I was like, that sounds a lot like what I do on my day-to-day job, where my job as part of Okteto is go talk to people, learn what they're doing on platform, recommend them new ways of doing it, and help them build platforms together so they can solve their challenges, avoid any obvious pitfalls, and be more effective. So I thought, hey, this is a very interesting paradigm. So that's kind of what I want to talk about with you all today. And there's kind of came up with a list of 10 things that I feel we can learn a lot from platform games. And number one is, platformer games have one fairly thing in common, and that's what they're called platformers. It's about jumping around, not falling into cliffs, and dying. And that's the gist of the Mario game. You're jumping, different challenges, going left to right, you're trying to avoid all these pitfalls. What's interesting is that platforms are the same way. When we're building a platform, one of our kind of core missions is we want to help our users avoid any obvious pitfalls. We don't want them to deploy a super large database. We don't want them to crash production the same way that we don't want Mario to fall down one of these holes. So very interesting, like when it comes to platform, a lot of our goals there is this, is how do we limit risk? How do we prevent every team in our organization from reinventing the wheel? How do we avoid kind of like this sprawling choices? In the terms of platform games, it's all about winning and saving the princess, getting more coins. In the world of software, it's all about how do we limit the risk that an organization has, how to make sure they achieve their goals as fast and as reliable as possible. So interesting how at the end of the day, it's all about preventing things from falling down places we don't want them to. That's kind of the first thing identified. The second, and this is kind of like, as I said earlier, the genesis of this presentation is the importance of building repeatable patterns and how this allows you to build a strong foundation. In the Mario games, there's 3 or 4 things that no matter which game you're playing, the first one, Super Mario 64, the big Nintendo 3D change, all the way to the latest Super Mario Wonder on Wii, there are all these building blocks that are always the same. You jump, you dash, you can move in directions, there are power-ups. If you fall down a cliff, a hole, you lose a life. If you collect 100 coins, you gain a life. This is the same no matter where. And it's amazing, from a video game design, they managed to build this and sustained all over the years. But this is, for me, one of the very important things we have to remember as platform engineers. Repeatable patterns make it easier for our users. We don't want them to have to learn everything every time. When you're building a platform, you want to bring in the concepts everybody's used to and making sure there's certain continuity as you evolve your platform. You don't want to make these drastic changes because every time we remove these blocks, that's toil. That's time developers need to spend relearning. That is expectations that might not be met anymore. Imagine if you're suddenly playing a Mario game and suddenly the coins are not there. It changes completely how you play that game. And maybe it's a good thing if it's on purpose, but many times we don't forget. So one of the biggest learnings, and if you're going to get one learning out of this talk, is the importance of repeatable patterns, because that way platforms become second nature. And here is where talking to your users, we're thinking of a platform as a product, where remembering that you're building this so the end user can achieve a goal is very important, because you don't want to, quoting that old book, you don't want to move the cheese that often. So very important to remember. Repeatable patterns. Make sure they're consistent, make sure they are evident, and make sure that they are aligned with what the users need is very important, because what we want to accomplish is kind of what happened to me, where if you log into your platform today and then you're gone for 3 months because you're working on some other project, and then you come back to use the platform we're building, we want it to feel like they just know how to use it. And even if we change underlying technologies, if you go from one version of Kubernetes to another, if you're moving from one infra as code provider to another, you want to make sure that your platform presents this in a way that is repeatable, so your end users don't have to relearn everything every time, because that leads to uncertainty, annoyance, and a lot more things. Number 3, and this is one that it's obvious in great platforms, but I think is worth calling out, which is start easy and then expose complexity. This on your screen is one of the final levels in Mario, the first Mario. And I hate this level. I have bad memories of this flames going around and killing me all pretty much all the time. What's interesting is that, this is the first level, and you can see the first level, easy. You have to jump one thing. There's some blocks. There's no enemies around. But as you move forward, then we kind of hit this place where you still see there's a jump, there's a hole, but now you have a pipe, you have flames, and there's all these enemies lurking nearby. And there's something that's very important when we think about platforms, because I've seen many platforms that are very powerful, very sophisticated, but that they don't have an easy mode. And this means that as soon as you start using a platform, you need to learn all of this. And I'm going to use a real life example. I am a big fan of VMware's work, but I think a big difference between something like vSphere, which is, in my opinion, a platform, and something like Heroku was this start easy, then expose complexity. There are reasons why each product's met each way. Please don't take this as a dink of any, but I think it's important when we're building platforms to make sure we start here, because you want to bring in your users, make it easy for them to accomplish their goals, and then expose the complexity. Please don't have firewalls on your platforms and things like that. Make sure you don't want your users to burn or the equivalent, but do expose this complexity slowly. Like, make something that works, make them succeed at first, slowly but surely, and then give them the tools to handle these complexities. No, there's many metaphors for this. There's breaking glass. There's the off-roading versus golden paths, but I think they all speak about the same, which is you want a path that is easy to start, that you can get some early wins, that your developers can start using it and enjoy, and then give them all this complexity. Maybe this means an onboarding where you have to first deploy, a very simple app to get a feel for it before you go for the gigantic, enterprise-grade application. Or maybe it's limiting certain features behind menus or behind certain configurations. I don't know. This is very specific to how you're building your platform, but do remember that it's very important to invest in clear onboarding, and that you don't want to expose all the complexity at once, because that is very hard for users to understand, to ingest, and adapt. And platforms are amazing, but platforms are meant to enable people to do other things. The job is not the platform, unless you're a platform builder, like some of us here. But for the users, the platform is how they get to their job. So the easier we make it for them to get started, to understand what our platform is good for, what is not, the better we're going to be on this. And here's where it's probably the only slide I have with text, but I think this is very important. Something I talk a lot about is, as you think of your platforms and you think about onboarding and exposing complexities, I think one of the most important decisions we need to make as platform builders is choose one of these two paths. In my opinion, two paths of platforms. You're either completely abstracting away complexity, which is something like Heroku, for example, for Container, or you have those that help developers handle complexity. To me, Crossplane is a great example of this. It's very hard to do both. And maybe you can do it like by progressively showing features, whatnot. But this is one of those things that I really recommend you kind of think about, is what are you trying to do with your platform? Do you want to make it that, hey, one click and deploy and it's very limited, but super abstracted away? or you want something where developers can compose their solutions and build them. This again goes a lot to the conversation we've been having in the world of Kubernetes for many years now. Of like, do you expose Kubernetes? You have a super big abstraction on top. There's no easy answer. There's no like you do this and you'll be good. But it is something that is very important that you constantly question and ask yourselves as you're building your platforms to make sure that, hey, you're building what you're intending to. But anyway, this is one of the serious slides, I guess. Now back to Mario, because number 4 in this list of how Mario made me a better engineer is understanding the importance of a clear win after you defeat the big boss. If you play in the Mario games, you know there's always a big boss at the end of every world. Every boss is unique. You have to jump or hit or smack in a certain way. And after a few hits, you defeat them. But when you defeat them, there's always this big music. The music changes. There's lights. There may be explosions, fireworks, things dancing around. Now, depending on, and this is very important because this is a signal that, hey, you accomplished something. Even, the old school levels, even when there's not a boss at the end, at the end of any level, Mario jumps on this pole, the pole goes down, and depending on how many points you got, you'll see explosions in the castle, the music will change, there might be lights. And this is very important because you want to make sure when you're building a platform that you have these moments of success. I'm hoping there's no big boss at the end of your platform, or maybe that can be kind of like a cool, Easter egg. But you do want to make sure that your users learn and realize, hey, you hit something. When you deploy, hey, your deployment has been successful. Or if you're running a test, making sure very clear your objective was accomplished. And this is both from a UX perspective, but also from a broader perspective of your platform. When you're building a platform, you have to have very clear understanding of what is the outcome that you're driving. What do you want your users to accomplish, and how are they going to measure it, and you're going to measure it? Because one of the biggest kind of challenges I've seen with the industry is not having clarity on this, because platforms, especially as they grow, they have a lot of different users. No, you have the people actually using the platform, the developer who's, let's say you have a platform for deploying dev environments, kind of what we do. You have the user that is clicking and deploying the environments, no? But you also have the user that is the platform engineer that has to configure the platform, build features on top, make sure it keeps running. And then you have the VP who's funding the effort, who created a budget and hire a team. And that's something that video games get very well and that we can learn from. Is the case of Mario, you have the clear success when you finish the world. You have this clear success when you beat the big bad boss. But there's also the clear success at the end when, hey, mission accomplished, you rescue the princess, now you get to go on a vacation. This is something very important to remember because every stakeholder needs to be happy and satisfied that your platform is delivering on the outcomes they expect. From a CEO, which is they expecting faster velocity, better quality, this kind of high level ROI kind of metrics. The actual CTO who might be expecting a certain technology to be adopted broadly across the organization. You have the platform engineers who might be measured based on availability, adoption. And then you have the developer who wants to use something that makes her life or his life easier on the day to day. So very important to remember this because building platforms is very exciting, but it is challenging because you always need to balance all these different personas, and they're always there. Even if you don't realize it, maybe they're not immediately looking at your platform, but every company needs to ask for headcount, ask for time, for prioritization, and they're expecting results. So it is very important to remember that when you're thinking about platforms, make sure you have a very clear definition of success, of the mission, of the big boss, and when you win, make it obvious. No, and here's where the investment, of course, in UX, in dashboards, in clear metrics, in communication, in internal marketing makes a lot of sense. And I know it might not be natural for a lot of us, but it is very important. And honestly, I think it's more one of the clearer indications of success or lack of on a platform is not having good understanding of the stakeholders, the success, and not having good mechanisms to measure and kind of mark, hey, milestone achieved, mission accomplished. Now we can go and take a vacation with our friends because we already rescued the princess. So really important one. Another thing that I learned from video games is the importance of shipping sequels. Mario Bros has, I think I checked the Wikipedia, maybe 40 different games. And there's maybe like 15 I could list that are clearly a direct line. And, video games, they do it because, they want to make money, they want to leverage the newest technologies, you want to tell new stories. But platforms also have to be that way. When you're building a platform, never think of it as like once and done. No, ship something, make sure there's value, make sure you celebrate the success, make sure there's a clear goal. And when you achieve that goal, remember that, go back and ship your sequel. In the case of startups, the typical constant iteration. In the case of a large organization, maybe it's as you adopt new technologies, but it is important to remember that you have to iterate. Platforms are like gardens, they are like friendships, they have to be cultivated, they have to be constantly reassessed, and they need to keep moving. Because if you build it once and just leave it there for your users, it's going to be useful for a while, and then it's going to like no longer be there forever. So it's very important to continue to invest, and this is something that is at all levels. No, I gave a talk at CubeCon a few weeks ago in London on this topic of how it was very important for platform engineering teams to be very vocal about the need for constant iteration. Platforms are products. I think by now, this is something we've been talking in the community for a very long time. I think by now it's clear, and it's something that platform engineering teams in particular need to be very vocal about. Because when you're embarking on your platform journey, you need to make sure that the stakeholders understand that this is a long-term investment, that you're going to be shipping a series of platforms, you're going to be iterating, you're improving things, maybe removing features nobody needs, adding new features. It depends, polishing, improving performance, depending on what you're building. But it's very important to be vocal about the need to continue to build, because this is how you gain adoption. You build something, you see what works, you build more of that. And I know this sounds a lot like building products, like building companies, but this is because platforms are products. They are internal products most of the time, but it's something you need to continue to invest. And this is something that sometimes, leadership, especially if they're not plugged into this world, they think, okay, I'll give you 3 months, bigger platform, great, now do something else. And that's not realistic. You need to continue to invest. And it is in your best interest as a platform maker to be super vocal about it and say, hey, this is the first one, now this comes, like a roadmap, like your first release, your second version, your third, and hopefully you'll keep building platforms for years to come, because I'm hoping that they'll be valuable, they'll have a lot of users, and the business will see the benefit. But this doesn't come naturally. And a great example of this is GitHub. I've been using GitHub a very long time, and this is what GitHub looked, I think, about 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago, probably. You can see a lot of the building blocks are there, going back to the importance of repeatable patterns. But, this is one version. You have issues, you had pull requests. The first version of GitHub didn't even have pull requests. That came out later. But then, you go to this fresh, new, more features. Now they have a CI/CD engine built in with actions, project management, a wiki, a data layer. But this is because, they kept investing on it. They kept hearing their customers and shipping more things. I know GitHub is a product, it's a bit different, but we can learn a lot from that. And going back to the topic of shipping the sequels, it's all about this continuous improvement. And especially for people building internal platforms, you need that continuous funding. You need that continuous attention from stakeholders, time, resources, headcount. So please be very vocal about this and the importance of long-term investment in platforms. Another thing that is, I don't think it's that obvious, but I've been talking about this as well a lot, is you have to also, sometimes let the princess save you. When we build platforms, we think, hey, I'm going to build this, I'm going to make it easier for my developers. And that's great, but it's not a one-way street. If we remember like video games, Mario is the main character, but dude, there's all this cast that is supporting you. Sometimes, there will be a Toad showing up with the right upgrade for you, or you may need to jump on the back of a turtle to achieve, get to a higher spot. This is very important, and this translates, in my opinion, to being good at listening, being good at engaging with your users, make sure about engaging with all other stakeholders and applying their feedback and their needs into your platform, because platform is a collaboration effort. If you're thinking of building a platform and you're thinking, hey, 2-3 people, they're gonna be a team, go in a corner, code for 6 months, come back and show us a platform, that's not gonna be successful. You want to make it small, agile, fast, and make sure all your team members, both direct team members, but also the broader ecosystem of your platform, feels empowered to give you feedback. So it's very important to build in these feedback loops. Whether you're doing interviews or surveys, or you have an issue tracker, it's up to you. But during my career, I've worked for companies where platforms were built more as an internal kind of separate effort, and I've never seen that succeed. But when there's a small platform built first, then feedback, then you kind of have good use cases in mind, and then you put it out, that is more successful. And to me, that's very important. No, there is this cast of people. We're always we all have different point of views, different needs. Just like in the game, some people, some characters need to swim, others fly, others jump over things. The same way with developers. No, some might need to build cloud infrastructure, others are building APIs, others might be building front end. So it's very important to keep this constant communication loop and make sure that you're leveraging the gift that is feedback and the superpower of listening, understanding, challenging your assumptions, and then turning that into a better platform. Every single time when I see people that I look up to and I say, wow, they're building this really cool software, this really cool platform, when I ask them, one of the things we always mention is, yeah, we talk to a bunch of users all the time. And then, you take it, you ingest it, you transform that into your product, into your platform, and then you ship it. And you keep doing this. And it goes back to shipping a sequel. It's also important, but you also need to listen so you know what to ship. And because you want to ship something, a sequel that is successful and that people love using. All right, we're almost at the end of this. It's 10 topics. This is number 7. The importance of shortcuts. And here's where I show my age. Because when I was playing video games in the early days, like, oh, kids this day, you have it so easy. Well, back then there was no saving, there was no batteries on games, no SD cards. You would turn on your Nintendo, you would play to the game, and you either beat the game or you will lose, but then you had to turn off your computer or your Nintendo console and then start over from zero. And that is frustrating and that's boring. And that's where some games like Mario had these shortcuts. The warp zones. If you were on level 2, you could jump on a certain block, find a hidden path, and that will allow you to jump from level 2 to level 5, I think. And there's another one that you could go all the way to level 8. And that was great. One, because you had to discover it, it's a different story, but also because that allowed you to kind of like not have to start from zero every time. And that is super important for platforms. You don't want every developer to always have to start from zero. You want them to be able to leverage the work others have done. Samples, templates, ways to recover from failure. These are all very important. With the emergence of infra as code, it's a lot easier than before. You can have a repo with like a definition of an application. You have repos with definition of your infrastructure. But it's very important that your platform works well with this. No, hey, you have a staging environment and you want to deploy a second staging environment because maybe you need to do a long running test. You don't want this to have to be a multi-month effort because nobody knows how to get another one. You want to automate all of that. If a developer is running some tests and it fails on CI, you don't want them to have to wait for a full CI run again to understand why the test failed. You want them to have shortcuts. Maybe they can SSH to the CI machines, or maybe they can run the same test on a separate environment and get the result fast. It really depends on what you're building, but it is important to keep this in mind, like the importance of not having to start over every time. As developers learn expertise, allow them to have things like shortcuts, to be able to jump some of the hoops early on, to have templates so they don't have to build every single application from zero. That one in particular is something I've seen very popular, especially now with Backstage and IDPs is even more popular. The idea of it's kind of golden paths or templates everybody can use. So really important. So don't forget shortcuts. You want to give developers their warp zone. How can they quickly get to where they need to be without having to build everything from zero every time? And at all levels, from code libraries, application templates, higher level abstractions, policies, all the way to the golden path of like one click, and then you have everything there for you. This is super important because you want them to be productive and you don't want the platform to slow them down. All right. Well, number 8. This is another one where there may be newer ways, but I like to remember this. When I was growing up, Nintendo had this phone number, the power line, that you could actually call, and kind of like the picture, you will call, and a Nintendo expert will answer, and you could ask tips and tricks or whatever. Hey, I'm stuck on this game on this level. I don't know how to beat the boss of level 7, and they will give you tips. And there were magazines that were published every month, Nintendo Power among them, or Club Nintendo in Mexico, very famous one when I was growing up. And they had this, shortcuts, the strategy guides, reviews of games, bugs you could exploit, warp zones, how to find them. And this is very important and kind of got me thinking. And the same thing happens in platforms, which is when you build a platform, of course, but also build a support system for your platform. Every customer of ours who has been very successful rolling out our platform, a key part of this success is they invested on internal documentation, training, on finding champions, on creating, Slack channels when people can ask questions. So it's very important that you have this. Don't have a phone number they can call unless you love being on the phone. Not for me, but I'm not going to judge you. But do have very clear paths where people can find help. Start self-service, internal documentation, a clear link in your platform of where to get help, maybe a repository of common questions that come up, a Slack channel, depending how your organization works, ticket system to escalate, do whatever feels necessary. But it's very important to create this and to foster a culture of knowledge sharing. Because if you cannot take the previous point of like warp zones and not having to start from zero, and then you make a way that can be shared across teams, one, that's less work for the platform engineering team. Two, that means everybody is kind of helping each other and everybody's vested on everybody else's success. At the previous company I used to work at, we had a platform where there was this centrally maintained repositories of like, how do I deploy a Python app? A Go, like event processor. How do I build a Python API meant for a public service? And then engineers could send PRs to these templates or issues to improve them. And that made the platform better for everybody. A lot of our customers have a shared channel where like anybody from their organization can ask questions, and then everybody else can already see them. Now with AI, it is a lot easier than before to set up bots that can actually answer questions on the products or platforms you have and give developers real answers. So please make sure to build all this in your platform. It's very important. Back in the day, user manuals, have a user manual for your platform. It can be a Notion page. It can be a full-fledged, like Docusaurus or Mintlify, one of these amazing doc platforms. Maybe it's just, a few screenshots and guides. Whatever it is, make sure you have something so that your users know how to get unstuck. Because people prefer self-service. Like they will escalate if they have to, but most of us, hey, we want to get our job done. I want to figure out, hey, what am I getting this error? And I want to keep going. And this is an area that again, it's very clear in my experience. The teams that are successful are the ones who invest on this. And teams who do not have platform success, one of the biggest reasons is because they didn't invest it on internal docs, support channels, and knowledge sharing mechanisms. Number 9, very important. Remember that it's about having fun. Video games are all about having fun. They can be stressful, you have to beat the big boss. They require skills, attention, dedication. But at the end of the day, I play video games because they're fun. I don't do it for a living. Nobody's forcing me to play. It's for fun. So it's very important when you're building a platform to keep this in mind. No, make sure the platform follows your company's culture. Make sure that is helping. Make sure that everybody, when they engage with your platform, they get a good experience. Fun for video games. It's one thing. It is for entertainment. Platforms are not used for entertainment most of the time, but you want people to have a good vibe, a good feeling about it. And as platform builders, we are ambassadors of this, which is where, when you are interacting with a user of yours who might be stuck trying to do something, it's very important to kind of always take this with like good attitude, trying to be helpful, kind of foster that culture of like, hey, we're building this to make it easier for everybody. So let's build it together. So very important, building platforms is a creative effort. It is like product. It's not just a technical challenge. There's UX, there's culture, there's people using tools. So it's very important that the tools reflect and foster the culture that you want to drive. Now, if your organization values self-service, make sure that's there. Simple things like making sure the colors follow your company color, the logos, all those things make a huge difference in people feeling like they own. So very important to invest in those things as well. And finally, in video games, when you die, funny things happen. You'll see Mario running around screaming because the Bowser burned him, but then you start over. The same thing with platforms. No, platforms are all about minimizing risk. So make sure that whatever you do, there's always a reset button. Whatever you do, there's always a way to recover. Please make sure that people cannot push to production with one button and not roll it back. Make sure there are guardrails, make sure there are protections. But then when all of those things fail, make sure that, hey, there's an easy way to recover. Backups, rollback policies, things like Argo CD make it a lot easier than before. Guardrails, like having a CI requirement. All of those things are very valuable. It's very important that platforms protect that. To me, is one of the most important missions of a platform is to protect your users and make sure that one, they don't die. But if they die, that they can easily restart, save time, and go at it again. And these are kind of like 10 things that I learned from video games that I believe are making me a better platform engineer. And just to summarize them, number 1, build a platform that saves your users from jumping into cliffs, guardrails, ease of use, abstractions. Make sure they have repeatable patterns, but that allow you to build a strong foundation. You don't want people to have to relearn your platform over and over. You want continuity. You want overall the same abstractions. Make sure there's an easy mode where people can start using your platform without having to learn every single feature on day one, and then progressively allow them to kind of use more of the complexity. Make sure there's a clear win for your platform, for users, for platform teams, for stakeholders. It's not going to be the same goal. Different personas have different needs and goals, but make sure this is clear and that your platform allows them to realize this quick enough. Remember, you have to ship a sequel. Platforms are like gardens. You have to keep working at them. If you stop working on them, they wither and die. So do that Remember to let the princess save you sometime. You don't have to carry all the burden as a platform team. Open your ears, open your eyes, listen, learn, engage with your end users, and make sure their needs are heard. And make sure that you get good at kind of extracting requirements from even from the complaints and when people feel annoyed. All of that is a treasure. Use it to improve your platform. Make sure your players, your users, have shortcuts so they don't have to start always from zero. Provide templates, provide ways to save state, to duplicate it, those kind of things. Make sure you have a Nintendo Power hotline, a support channel. If I'm stuck, how do I get myself unstuck? Is there help? Is there an AI bot that I can talk to? Is there a support channel I can use to get help when I need? That is very important. Internal documentation, fundamental. Build it to have fun. Platforms are all about reducing toil, abstracting the boring, painful things away. Keep it in mind. Be an ambassador of this. When you talk to your users, when they're stuck, when you're gathering feedback, remember that it's all about reducing friction. And friction is not just when you're coding, it is when you're trying to see a result, when you're trying to accomplish a goal, and there's something in between. So be an ambassador of this. And finally, when your users die, make sure there's a way to restart. Make sure there's not like they cannot delete production and nothing, and then they can roll it back. So invest in rollbacks, in guardrails, in things that make it less dangerous and less dangerous for your users. Those are the 10 things that I've learned about software engineering that being a lifelong player of video games helps me. I hope you found a nugget or two here. My goal with this talk is that after this, when you're done with Cube Crash and you're having coffee or something, that one or two of these things are going to make you think and hopefully will make you a better platform engineer. But thank you so much for your attention. I am online. If you want to chat later about this, please, you can find me on X, on Blue Sky, and all the other LinkedIn, all the other social networks. And if you like this kind of content, we have a mailing list, DevX All Day, where you can sign up for more of this kind of content. But thank you very much, and please enjoy the rest of Cube Crash.